Just going to make this video while I make breakfast. Is it the Jews? Is the ultimate analysis of this. It's just now. You get a Walmart delivery, right? You think, yeah, no big deal. I go to answer the door, like a good citizen, and I get hit. A strong smell of marijuana coming from 108. I mean, what do you expect living in a trailer park? I think is the assumption. Marijuana keeps the poor poor, so it just, ensures our suffering. But yeah, involuntary exposure to secondhand marijuana, just answering the fucking door. I reported it to the police, but it sounds like they're just psychologically neutered by Black Lives Matter and politicians. I don't think that they're really going to be as effective as they were when I first moved here. I hope they are, because, yeah, okay, so these people smoking marijuana went away. They have a child in the house. They're smoking weed with the kids inside the house. That is fucking horrible. They also smoke cigarettes with the kids in the house. All kinds of shit. They are shitty people, and marijuana is a contributing factor to that. Is it because they smoke weed, or do they smoke weed because they're shitty? Is it a feedback loop? They're shitty because they smoke weed, and the weed makes them shitty. Rinse, wash, repeat. Right? So, you can just tell they're really shitty people on physical appearance. They're fat. Like, really fat. And chain smoke cigarettes along with marijuana with children in the house. That's terrible. Terrible. That's a shitty person sign. That's like a red flag, a signifier that you're a shitty human being and the world would be better off if you died. So if you look at the drug and sex revolution and Weimar Germany, specifically Berlin, it's the same thing, right? Drugs and sex. What I call the hypersexualized hookup culture of drug abuse and addiction. So if you ask yourself, is this the Jews manipulating people without even being in the same room? Right? Without even being in the same room as them, they're tricking them into purchasing products, dealing drugs, being gay and, polygamous and all kinds of polyamory, whatever. I could see that being a valid argument. Like Moses Mendelssohn owning the second wealthiest bank in the Weimar period, and of course banks are the ones who fund and receive money from the pornography industry, drug industries, etc. So that would be a fitting explanation. But I guarantee these people are shitty all on their own, without any help. Hence why they're poor and Mexican and etc., right? Like all the signs. And literally, as that was happening and I called the police to report it, I saw the giant pit bull, Ganja, running around off leash to the 108. Ganja lives at like 111 and 110, so I'm like, holy shit, this is like a twofer. This is like, I'm getting all kinds of law breaking, and so that's where racism falls apart. Is, the shitty people at 108, they're very mixed race. There's like a halfling, like a half black, half Mexican kid. And so if you say, Gabe, doesn't that bother you? The blacks are sleeping with these your women, the Mexican women. No, those women are gross. They're, not just because they're fat, they're also ugly. So have at it, Blackie. No thanks. Ugh. Have standards, and they do drugs. That's another no from me, right? Like, I'm good. I'll pass. No thanks. No junkie whores for my wife. Like, those things are related, by the way. Women who do a lot of drugs also like black guys. It's a part of the brain. There's actually a neuroscience behind it. The pleasure center of the brain is the amygdala, and of course the prefrontal cortex is the self-control. So women who seek pleasure and lack self-control often end up dead from drug overdose deaths, on welfare, etc. It's a very common social science pattern that undoubtedly the science is being suppressed because of the social engineers who are intentionally cultivating the great race mix. Anyway, and are they Jewish? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I digress. Where was I? Oh, yeah. So, the neighbors to the south of them, who own the pit bull named Ganja, are white. And Whitey cannot live without his drugs and his booze either. So it's not as easy to cluster group and say, oh, well, Mexicans do all the drugs and they're shitty because drugs and sex and blah, blah, blah. But Whitey isn't like that. No, Whitey is absolutely like that. Hence Berlin, Weimar period, the drug and sex revolution of the 1960s, etc., etc., etc. The elites are using drugs and pornography to weed out the genetically inferior, but there's also a whole lot of other things they're doing. That's not the only practical application of the corrupt abuse of the masses by these corporations and government, etc. What a fucking nightmare. So now I find myself high against my will and without my consent. Involuntary exposure to secondhand marijuana just because people are so shitty. So this is an argument for fascism. The police are so fucking dickless, right? They're so neutered. They're like Christians. No! Oh, the people are murdering us, but we're supposed to love our enemies. Bah, we don't want to be mean to the criminals. Bah. Nothing's wrong with weed. Google told me so. Google would never lie. Neither would the memes on Facebook. Bah. Like, that's how easy it was to corrupt Whitey. Psychologically, to puppet Whitey and everyone else. Is it the Jews? Is it social engineering? I think the answer is both, yes and no. Like, can you blame Jews or even Saxons, Anglo-Saxons like the Walton family, etc., for, exploiting this opportunity? Because let's say the social engineers decide to reverse trends in the opposite direction and try to force shitty people like this trailer trash that I live around to not do drugs and to not smoke cigarettes and to diet and exercise. I don't think that would work. Right? Like, if they deprived people of porn on the internet and marijuana and alcohol and pills and, fucking etc., Americans would not, it wouldn't work. Americans wouldn't do it. They couldn't live without these terrible things that they claim are addictive. So, it's really funny to me that Whitey is blaming the Jews or anti-Semites, because it's not just white anti-Semites now. There's black anti-Semites, there's brown anti-Semites, etc. They're blaming the Jews for their own moral corruption rather than blaming themselves. At the same time, it's not all Jews and it's not just the Jews, but there are Jews that are morally corrupting the West. So they're simply exploiting a naturally occurring dynamic in human nature. Apparently people can't choose to be good. They always choose to be shitty unless they're forced. On average. I'm sure there's outliers. I think I'm an outlier, but I am like one of the only people I know, not just in this neighborhood, but in this entire country that I've met, who's anti-marijuana and anti-pornography, etc. I'd imagine the social engineers use social media to keep us from uniting and creating an effective resistance. Right? And that's another interesting thing. How was it so easy to transfer human consciousness into technology? Well, why didn't more Americans recognize what was happening and resist the fact that all of our personal relationships, all of our thoughts, identities, etc., are now digital? And we are so easily controlled and moved and directed by our fucking smartphones. Manipulated.